Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's WYCA 102.3 FM, your Rejoice Gospel Network. I'm Miss Geraldine Smith. A pleasant encounter is here. And, baby, we got some food for you on this smorgasbord to listen to tonight. I have Attorney Allen back here, and all my other guests are here. And as they take the mic, because of time, I'm going to let them introduce themselves as they take the mic on. But Allen, Mr. Allen, Attorney Allen, just take over and just do your thing with all this information we got going on here.
Well, my name's Alan Mills. I'm the executive director of the Uptown People's Law Center on the north side of Chicago. What we were talking about before we went on air here is this juvenile life without parole. A couple of years ago, well, in Illinois, for many, many years, for decades, children, 15, 16, 17 years old, have been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. So we're throwing these kids' lives away forever. 2 years ago, the United States Supreme Court said that is unconstitutional. You can't just sentence a kid to life because their brains aren't developed, and it's not fair to put them in jail forever without giving them a chance to show they're rehabilitated, to show that they've matured, to show that they're not the same person at the age 40 that they were at the age of 15, because, like, who is? Then the second fight was whether or not that ought to be retroactive. That is, whether it should apply to all those people who are currently in prison and serving that life without parole, or whether it was just going to be for the future. Just within the last few months, the Illinois Supreme Court decided that, yes, it would be retroactive and it would apply to all those people, and there are about 60 in Illinois, hundreds and hundreds across the country, but 60 in Illinois. The man who actually brought that case in the Illinois Supreme Court, Adolfo Davis, who the Law Center knows from TAMS, because he unfortunately also spent some time in TAMS, is up for resentencing this week in room 400 at 26 in California at 11 a.m. Monday morning. So he's looking for support. People should get there. The judge has said, don't try to come in the middle of the hearing. If you want to go, get there early. But this is really important, because the real issue here is whether or not the judge is going to pay attention to someone's development. Adolfo is not the same person that he was at 16. Even then, it was ridiculous to give him life without parole. This is a man who, at the age of, I think it was 6 years old, was essentially abandoned by his mom, who was a drug addict, was out there in order to eat, had to go out and work. So he would go door to door trying to earn some money in order to buy food, and then eventually started doing a little shoplifting, got involved with a gang, and ended up as part of a group that committed a murder. He's always said he's not the one who pulled the trigger. He was the lookout. State says otherwise. The jury never had to decide, because we have this accountability theory where anybody who's involved in it at all gets the same sentence. So he was given life without parole, even though there's no evidence that he actually shot anybody. He's just had a terrible life, but he's really changed. He's written a great poetry book. His therapist from TAMS is actually supporting him and is going to be there to testify about the huge changes that he underwent, as will many, many other people to testify what's going on in his life now. So I think this is really important, not just for him. Obviously, it's really important for him, but I think it's really important for society as a whole that we don't write off anybody we shouldn't write off, but certainly we shouldn't be writing off kids at the age of 15 and 16 years old and saying what you did, your life should not be defined by the worst day of your life. And that's what happens when we throw people's lives away for the rest of their life. He did something terrible on one day, and that should not mean that when he's 60, 70 years old, he's defined by what he did when he was 15, 16 years old.
And to piggyback on that, I had just turned 17 when Brian Nelson from Uptown People's Law Center. I'm a regular here. But it's like me. I was 17 years old, just turned 17 when I caught my case. And the thing is, now these guys have hope. I got my education, self-educated in jail, learned. I now work at the law center. I go around helping people the best I can, giving back to the community. And these kids, like I was saying, we shouldn't write them off. We need to give them some hope, give them a chance to get an education so they can come out here and be an asset to society and help us and talk to the other young kids that are in their shoes now. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Adolfo, one of the many things he's done in order to really rehabilitate himself is he wrote a book of poetry, his own poetry, which he started writing way back when he first went into the juvenile system, but most of it's more recent. But it really traces his life from when he was a kid till now. And the reason he wrote it is not just for himself, but he's hoping it'll be read by young people. who will get an idea by reading this as to just what it means to go to prison, just what it means to get arrested, what it means to sit in a Supermax prison cell. And it's a very powerful book. It's called The Thoughts of a Broken Child, My Pain, My Tears, My Struggle. You can get it on Amazon or wherever your favorite bookstore is. And it's just a really powerful statement. I can't imagine somebody who's, I mean, it's not the work of a 15-year-old who has no care about other people. It's the work of a mature man who clearly has looked deep within himself. And if you just read his poetry, I don't know how you can't be moved. I certainly was.
Let me ask you a question, Attorney. How many of these youth, when they were sentenced before adulthood to life in prison, how many of them are girls?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I've been really involved with Adolfo's case because I know him from TAMS.
Right.
But I have not been the one who's looking. I know that there are several. I don't know how many of the 60 are female versus men.
That's something to look up. See how many girls. Mr. Norman, you got something?
Yeah, Norman Upshaw here. Basically, you know, I'm gonna pick it back on what both of you all really said about. First off, I just want to say that it was a shame what happened to this young fella. You know, that he went in as young as he did, and being as a juvenile, and the circumstances that he's, you know, been sentenced like this as a juvenile. But I'm also proud in the sense that what he's done since he's been in there goes back to what I've always said about the accountability factor. Writing and doing what he's doing, not for himself. And I'm glad you said that. It wasn't for himself, but it's for other young people. So that way they can give them something to think about before they even attempt or maybe have a thought of doing something, letting them know, hey, this is where you could end up. This could be you.
Right.
You know, and that's what I really love about the accountability. He was there, but he didn't allow the circumstances to overtake him. He did not allow to have a pity party, you know, which could have been easily done. He could have sat here and had a pity party and placed blame on everybody else. Oh, the system, this, that, and the other. I mean, we all know about the system, but this young man chose to do something about it while he was in there. And that's why I go back to when I always say about that accountability, it's not about the reaction, it's about the proaction. And this young man took proaction, doing what he's doing. And my only hope is that young people they do read it, and they do not only just read it as a book just to say that it's just another book, but it's something that can be life lessons that can be learned in life.
Right.
You know, not just something that, it's just something that they go to Barnes and Noble and pick up and just read, but hey, this is real life.
Or somebody can make a song out of some of his poems. It goes on the radio and gives the word out there. You know, it's instead of rap songs about gunning up and selling drugs, this is about the reality of that.
Yeah, if I ran the world, this would be required reading in like 7th grade in every public school, rather than reading these old dead poets who wrote back in the 1600s. Read something from somebody who grew up in, you know, Robert Taylor Holmes or Inglewood. I don't know what neighborhood he's from, but from the hood. That's who they ought to be reading the poetry of, and it's about their own. It's about these kids' own lives.
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Gregory Jones, and I think it's very important that we start mentoring some of these young people because, you know, if we catch them before they start to get in trouble, then we wouldn't have so many of them incarcerated. For example, I played on a 1973 state championship team, Hirsch High School, and it's been 40 years, and none of us even been back to the high school to even, you know, mentor some of these kids. And I think that we could have saved a lot of these young kids from being in gangs or trying to guide them in the right direction. So it's going to be very important to try to do prevention programs because it's so important now because we got so many of our young kids getting killed, and we got to really try to find a way, you know, to stop all this madness that's going on with them.
You know, to add to what you were saying, I was just thinking as you was talking. I get children from the juvenile, and they come over to Inglewood, and some of them from Inglewood. And sometimes they have to do a certain amount of hours over there before they can be cleared with the probation officer. And sometimes the judges will send them over there under the guidance of me and Mr. Dolphin to make sure they getting some type of counseling or some type of intervention that we're doing with them so that they don't want to put them into these juvenile centers and whatever. But when I say that, I often wonder, I know 2 judges, Judge Katz and Judge Sophia Hall, works with us to try to help prevent some of these things from happening. And we work with the Restorative Justice Project over there. But at the same time, when a judge can sit on a bench, heartless, and sentence a 15-year-old to natural life, what kind of system do we have in place to monitor or to watch what these judges are doing when we vote for them to put them in these offices? When they, to take away 20 years from this young man's life, or whatever young man, young girl, or whatever it is, I think our accountability is lacking a little bit because we never read the history of how some of these judges. We watched Judge Maloney rape young black men to put them in prison with the sentencing that he gave them. And then a few years down the road, he did 16 years himself. How could corrupt judge corrupt? And we sit back and let those kind of
Well, you know what? And I said this on a program when I was here about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I mentioned the fact during the season when we have a chance to hire and fire people by voting, that's our opportunity to hire and fire people. And when you don't fire the folk that need to be fired and don't hire the people that needs to be hired, you get what you get. You know, and that's the accountability part right there. When you have the opportunity, just like this last political season, we were the bosses. Mm-hmm. We ran things between Rahm Emanuel and Chuy Garcia on April 7th. We were the bosses. We were able to fire Rahm and hire Chuy if we wanted to. Rehire Rahm, which ended up happening. Same way it comes down to judges. You hire and fire them. But if you don't choose to fire them and rehire them, the same system continues to go on and on. So when the opportunity is to fire folks, get rid of them, do it.
And the other sad part is, it's sad for the victim's family. But Adolfo's family is also being tortured. My son is going to spend the rest of his life in jail and die there when he was just a baby, and he was influenced by older guys. You know, and these older guys most of them probably didn't get life like he did. You know, and it's psychological torture to the family. I know what my mom.
It's a huge financial burden.
Burden, yes. My mother went through, and just looking at me in TAMS, to have that guy sent to TAMS at his age, and we had another young man who was 17 years old, got to the prison system with life, without parole. 2 weeks later, they sent him to TAMS. He's not even adjusted to prison. They've already got him in a supermax, and now he's got severe psychological problems. It's the accountability, yes. It's gatekeepers, they need to stand up. And what is the word? Hope. Give these kids hope you can work your way out. Get an education, do something productive so you're an asset. And it's great that finally they're giving him a chance to show that he can do something better.
And we're happy about that. And attorney, I'm elated about that. But I'm concerned about, I know it was some young girls, and one of them was Jackie Martinez and Deanna Beecham, 16 years old, got natural life. Well, she didn't get natural life, but she got 95 years. So where is the door, and how do we turn the key on the door that trapped this kid at 17 years old behind bars for 95 years?
I would like to say something on that.
Go ahead.
I think part of the problem is that these building of prisons is become really out of control. It's forcing some of these judges to make these radical decisions that's causing all these things to happen, and we're trying to ask ourselves, why are these things happening? Because the prisons have become business. Before, they didn't give kids life 20 years ago. You were juvenile. You used to get off with murder. They would put you in juvenile home and put you on probation. Now you're giving kids life, so that means that the laws have changed drastically. So I think that all nationalities need to protest this building of prisons, because it's causing these judges to make all these radical decisions, and it's going to continue if we don't start putting some kind of limitations on building the prisons.
And there's a case that Alan did great work on. Now juveniles, before they're violated and sent back to juvenile facilities, get an attorney. And Alan can explain that better because these kids don't understand what a pro violation is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me back up. I don't want to take away at all the fact judges are definitely responsible, and unfortunately the person who got 95 years doesn't count as part of this because it's not natural life without parole.
Right.
So,
but it is natural
no,
life
I know.
to her.
And what I was going
She
to say
won't
is
live
other
95 years
states
in there.
other states have tried to avoid the Supreme Court rule by saying instead of having a mandatory life, we're going to give mandatory 60, 70, 80-year sentences, which is the same thing, just with a different name. So
under disguise.
Right. So that's a fight going on in the legislature right now. Is in Illinois is what the alternative is going to be. These guys are getting sentenced without any rules out there, but there's certainly a push in the legislature to make it so that there's some really long sentences instead.
What happened when the judge when they go back to court, one of them go back to court, who has a natural life sentence, and the judge said, "Okay, I'm just going to give you 99 years."
Well, and then there'll be a second round of appeals saying he just avoided the Supreme Court's ruling. Because remember, the Supreme Court ruling wasn't based on natural life; it was based on the fact that people change, and that the courts have to give an opportunity for that change to be considered. And 99 years doesn't give you any more opportunity than natural life does. So it's totally meaningless.
Years.
Or even 60 years. I mean, you lock up a 16-year-old and you give him 60 years, and these days in Illinois, that's real 60 years, no good time.
Right.
So you're talking about somebody not getting out until they're 76 years old. It's ridiculous. But I don't want to let the legislature off the hook here either, because most of these sentences, including Adolfo's, it wasn't up to the judge. It was mandatory life. Mandatory life, so that the judge had no discretion at all other than to say the rule was unconstitutional, which he might well should have done. But don't let the legislature off the hook here. We all know what happened. What happened was back in the 1980s, there was this whole myth of the super predator coming down. And it was full of the papers that there's this new generation of young black men who are never going to amount to anything, and they're all raised in crime, and they're raised in these horrible projects, and they're just going to go kill each other, and therefore they don't have any morals, they don't care about anybody, and they're going to go out and destroy society, so we better lock them all up when they're 15 for life in order to keep us all safe. It never had any basis in reality, and it certainly doesn't have any now. But even back then, it was absolutely a scare tactic. It had everything to do with tearing down the projects and putting up expensive developments like you see in Cabrini now.
Poor people can't live in it.
Of course not. It's because they're $1 million condos in what used to be public housing. But that was all part of this demonization of poor people, partly to get their land and partly to get people's votes by saying, we're taking care of the problem. We're going to lock up Adolfo for 70 years. And make sure he never gets back on the street, which had nothing to do with anybody being safer. The streets aren't safer because we have a bunch of kids locked up forever. All we've done is wasted people's lives and demonized a whole group of people.
And wasted the taxpayers' money.
And absolutely wasted the taxpayers' money. Yep, absolutely right.
Dr. Red Ross. First, it was in 1969. There wasn't but the county and the Bridewell. There was only 2 jails. So if anybody knew anything about 26th Street, they built that complex because they knew what was coming. Richard Pryor made a joke and said, how can God give you 1 life and somebody else give you 2 or 3 lives? I have friends in prison that had several life sentences, such as Jeff Ford and Larry Hoover. Yep. But at the same token, I wanted to ask Norm something. You remember when you were talking about the control of the vote?
Mm-hmm.
What was Chewy's name, first name?
Jesus.
No, what's his first name? Jesus. We've been waiting on Jesus, ain't we?
Jesus, yeah.
So how we know who they sent? It's funny, but think about it.
Yeah.
We've been waiting on Jesus, but we didn't vote for him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the other part is family members need hope too. These are their children. It's sad that there's a victim, yes, and there's no taking that away, but we need to have hope. Everybody needs hope of a better tomorrow. And if these guys get the opportunities like, hey, if you educate yourself, do this, you could get a chance. I hear so many guys asking, well, could I get a clemency hearing? Well, what have you done to deserve clemency? Oh, I've sat in my cell and watched Jerry Springer. It's like doing a job resume.
Oh, wow.
Get off your butt and get an education.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
But
fight for yourself.
You have to give an account that some of these youth, when they go to They didn't even know how to read.
No.
Right.
You have to give an account that when the police took some of these juveniles and kept them for days in these lockups and didn't do anything to help them, or never explained the law to them, or never released them at a certain hour time, in cold, hungry, and a lot of them may have said things out of their disillusions or whatever, but it doesn't excuse the fact that we, as a society, sit back and watch this happen and don't raise a finger to, but I mean the most as a whole to do anything about it. We are so hoodwinked at certain times. People are losing their home because of the red lights. People are suffering in a lot of different ways. And you tell me, they had churches having the battle of who could holler, calm Emmanuel, compared to the ones over here saying, praise Jesus. It is something serious wrong with this.
But let me push that back one step further. What we really, the other failure here, and again, Adolfo's case is a perfect example of this. We need to catch these kids when they fall down early on. I mean, you have a 6-year-old out there trying to earn enough money to eat.
Yeah.
That's our fault. I mean, yeah, his mom screwed up. She shouldn't have been high on drugs, but we shouldn't abandon a kid just because they got a bad mom. This is society.
No daddy.
Or no daddy. No daddy on the scene.
Don't leave
right.
the men's off the hook. 'Cause I'm
Absolutely
here
not.
now.
No, you're absolutely right. Nobody. The fact that he's out there trying to earn money to buy food at 6 years old, that kid never had a chance. He never had a chance to be a kid. And that's all of our failings. We need to have a system in place that steps in and catches those kids, and they can't be wandering around the streets on their own. Somebody should say, what are you doing? Who's feeding you? What are we doing here as a society? And yeah, if we leave kids out there on their own, they're going to do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Don't leave them on their own.
You leave grown-ups on their own, they do stupid
Well,
stuff.
that's true.
But that's
say-
good.
let me say something.
What you're doing is a perfect example of life builders. Taking these children early on and teaching them, you do have the power. You are smart. You are intelligent. You can do whatever you want if you put your mind to it, and listening to them.
You know the serious thing about this, and I know we headed for that time.
Already.
The serious part of this, yesterday we were having a meeting, a women's meeting yesterday with African women, African American women. We just had a good time. But a group of the kids in Inglewood decided they were coming in. The same group that I promised, okay, I'm going to help you do this, I'm going to help you do this. And I named them my T-Rags. They in my writing under my 501c3. That program is called T-Rags, the Remnants Achieving Greatness.
Okay.
So, here come my remnants. And they wanted to have a meeting yesterday. And I say, no, you're going to get out because I got something else scheduled. You know what the kids said to me? But we're your other kids. We're your other children. Mm-hmm. And I said, but I still got a meeting that we're on schedule, and I had forgot about this meeting or whatever. And guess what they did today?
Came today?
They came today on Sunday after church.
Now that's determination, and that's looking for hope.
Yeah.
They're looking.
It is how we describe hope.
Yep.
So when he walks in there today, ain't nothing I can do but give him some time. I just got to praying to God. I just got to saying hallelujah, right? And here come the kids to say, okay, now do what you just promised God you was going to do.
I wanted to make you aware of one thing before you get off the air. On the 15th, with the end of the tax, I want you to know they finna change the money over. And the country just joining that yen, so be ready for a stabilization. You might be shut down, period, all over the world.
I would also like to thank Mr. Crawford for allowing us to do this show. And it's Uptown People's Law Center will be coming 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Good Lord.
And thank you, Geraldine.
You're becoming one of the four-legged stool of sustainability, so that we can sustain our people in various ways. And getting this legal advice, we don't take that for granted.
Yep.
Mr. Crawford don't take nothing for granted, period. But he surely wouldn't have let this program go on for 20-some years unless we was doing something worthy to our audience ear.
Right.
And for that, I thank him also. And I know everybody in this room who worked for him, thank him for that. I'm going to be mad with him all the time. Go ahead. Cecile, did you have something you wanted to say? Make it quick.
I just think that a lot of the things that the people said today was very important, and that we can make a difference here if community begins to act like community, right? A lot of people talked about responsibility, and responsibility has to come from us caring about our children more than other people. When you look at the data, it's disproportionately black on black violence, and it's disproportionate black on black arrests, right? So what can we do? We need to become solutions oriented, and that's what I'm really happy to be involved with Life Builders, because they're taking it to that next level. But then at the same time, we have to address the systemic things that are there that have stacked it against our kids. Now that the majority of our children are the ones being arrested, all of a sudden they're not children anymore, they're adults, and the laws change.
Right.
So let's stop being slick about what's really going on.
They're not allowed to vote, though.
Right.
You know, but they're being treated like adults and sentenced like adults.
Right.
Not old enough to drink a beer, but old enough to spend the rest
Because
of
it
their
only
lives in
costs $1 a day for them to make furniture and license plates.
That's right. Cheap
Yeah,
labor.
so cheap
Slave
labor. So lock them up for life so you can have cheap labor for life.
Because the Constitution still allows prisoners to be used as slaves.
That's right.
Constitution all day, every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, WYCA 102.3 FM, your Rejoice Gospel Network. You know what? I said every Sunday that we are so grateful. We're grateful to Mr. Crawford. We're grateful to God for allowing this program. But we are grateful because he's using us to help other people and to help people with cases that, you know, that they're hopeless in some cases. I've had a lot of mothers to come to me who was crying out for help for their child inside of the prison system. We're going to do and continue to do. We're going to do it when we're broke or do it when we get a donation. But we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do. Ladies and gentlemen, WYCA 102.3 FM, your Rejoice Gospel Network. I'm Miss Geraldine Smith, and this is A Pleasant Encounter.